time. Yay! I'm going to be reviewing the story of Beautiful Girl, and this was written by Rachel Simon. I'm going to start with the cover. I love the cover. I'm going to try to tilt it so you can see. It has a pearlescent stock to it. Maybe the back would be better. Which really contrasts well with the sort of silhouette look to it. Nice typography. I like the spine. We pull in some symbols that are in the book. This paper does ripple. I've used it in the past on some other projects, and I don't like that it ripples, but it actually sort of works for this, so I like the cover a lot. Just as much as I like the book. This book I got in the bargain bin at Barnes & Noble when I paid $6 for it, and I had almost no expectations of this book. I think I'd read a review somewhere, and I sort of stored it in my head and said, if I ever see this cheap, I'll pick that book up. And when I saw it cheap, I was like, oh, that's right, this book looked good, I'm going to pick it up. This book I read after the Jane Austen ruined my life, and so I confess that I did read some of the last little bit, because I was like, if this book does not go where I want it to, I'm not going to bother. And it seemed like it was going to go where I wanted it to go, so I did read it. I am one of those weird people who actually do not mind spoilers, but I do try to keep these spoil-free for the most part. I think in the Jane Austen one I did give a little bit away, but it never really bothers me because I like to sort of see how the author develops the storyline. So I didn't quite know what was going on when I read the ending, but I was like, it seems cool, so I'm going to just see what it's like. So basically I felt burned, and I wanted to make sure I was not going to be burned again, and I was not burned. Okay, so this is the story of Linny, Homan, Martha, and a baby. And we have these four sort of storylines going on all at one time, which is really interesting. Linny is a little bit slow, and her parents don't quite know how to deal with that. Because the sister and the rest of the kids are pretty normal, so they put her in an institution, and it sounds like it's one of those, like in the 50s, 60s, where it's for the deaf, blind, and incompetent. I don't know what the word for that would be, but we know they existed. I don't know the terminology of it, so it's just me sitting here going, I don't know what they're called, but it's one of those. It's one of those. And so she gets institutionalized, so we see the sort of subculture of that, which I thought was really interesting, and it was really well developed. So we get to see the people who were living in these institutions, as well as the behind the scenes or the inner workings of these institutions and the politics behind it, which I thought was really intriguing. So we get to see what the security guards were doing, and we get to see what therapists were like and what they had to work with, and who was happy, who wasn't happy, and the politics behind it. So that was really interesting. So Beautiful Girl, Linny, and there's a guy, and at the beginning he just has a number. It's like number 42 or 45. It's in the 40s. They fall in love, actually, under these dire circumstances. And he only has a number because he's deaf and they can't communicate with him. So he can't actually say his name. And so if you didn't have a name, they just called you like John Doe number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 40, whatever. And so he's one of those. And there's a circumstance where they need to escape, so they do escape. And it turns out that she was pregnant, and you'll find out hows and whys on your own. And so they escape. She has this baby, and they find this lady, Martha. They get to her house. She decides it's safe, and Martha indirectly then invites them in, gets them, dried up, because it was on a storm, of course. So she gets them fresh clothes and feeds them, that sort of thing. And then she realizes there's a baby there. And so we have a little bit of time of calm, very limited time, and then the guards track Linny and Homan, who we find is his name later, down, and This is all in the first chapter, so I'm giving nothing away. So they track them down. Homan escapes. She gets taken back to the institution, and the baby is now with Martha. And at the end of the first chapter, Lenny does manage to speak, and she whispers in Martha's ear, hide her. So Martha takes this literally, and she hops around the country hiding the little girl and raising her, which was difficult at first because she's this like retired elderly school teacherly lady, and she has never had her own kids, so she doesn't actually know how to raise a kid. So we see her life with the baby, Lenny's life when she's back in the institution, and what happens to Homan when he escapes. So we have these storylines going on, and eventually towards the end, the little girl and what has happened to her. So we have 4 storylines going, which sounds like it should be confusing, but it's really not. We get to see what happens to these institutions, life during and after them. I really loved this book. I didn't expect to love it to the degree that I did. So I usually give my guilty pleasures the 5s, and then I'm usually harsher on the non-guilty pleasures, like 3 and 4 range, but I'm actually going to give this one a 5 as well, because it was so interesting. I loved the characters. I loved finding out about everything behind the scenes and the politics of it. I've loved this book so much, it's probably in my top 5 now of all-time reads. I didn't expect that to happen. So this was a surprisingly good read and at an awesome price. So if you're looking for a book that's a little bit different than the norm, I think you're going to really enjoy this one. So check it out, The Story of Beautiful Girl. Alright, I will see you next time. Bye.